Reyes, for keeping the energy going and for the warm welcome to all of us. Really appreciate that. I think that energy is definitely getting infused in all of us throughout this day. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
And thanks to the 3AI team. I'm sure my panelists also feel that energy as you started introducing us and infuse that momentum in this entire panel. Well, as you rightly said, you know, AI and the future of AI is not just going to be dependent on AI. It's going to be based on a lot of other things. And for me, as an individual who's seen AI evolve in the last decade, I call the last decade as the foundation for AI, and the entire decade which has helped all of us understand what AI can do, can't do, and what are the future possibilities. And we heard about those future possibilities in today's conversation as well across different presenters. So for this decade, one thing which I'm really loving it, that we are going to be the futurist, where we are going to talk about, okay, what does 2030 looks like for enterprises, for us as individuals, professionals, and I'll give a reference of Steven Spielberg over here. He's my favorite, I would say, creator when it comes to movies. If you look at all his movies, probably he's one of the best who has paved the vision of what AI can do and can't do. His movie in 2001, where he actually made a movie on AI, which many of us were still fathoming, oh, there's something like this which will come in. But 2020, it is a reality. He's spoken about flying cars or autonomous cars and flying machines and Star Wars, many more. I can keep talking about Steven Spielberg. So today, and along with all the other panelists, we get to choose and don the hat of Steven Spielberg in a way to paint the picture of what 2030 can look like for all of us. So switching gears, India just came out from a very exciting bidding process, which happened last week. And I would love to hear about how that bidding process and that, as individuals, as consumers, we may not really understand, what it takes, but would love to invite Dr. Shivani to come and share some perspectives on 5G, why it is important for India and why it is important for AI as an ecosystem, and how do we, see that impact coming through. Shivani?
Thanks, Aris, for a very warm welcome. Very happy to be part of such a wonderful panel and elite leaders of AI. And I think let's talk about 5G. Though India is little behind in the 5G journey, West has adopted 5G a couple of, quarters back. We are yet to have the auction on 5G. The last week auction was 4G spectrum. We will be having that auction for 5G probably later this year or early next year. So when we talk about 5G, what does that mean to common human being? So I think when we talk about the network, two things come directly into our mind. One is the speed and the kind of a latency, what one can think about it. So if you see the difference between 4G and 5G, which is going to happen, it is going to be probably 100 times faster speed than what we are getting in 4G. So if we are getting probably 1 GB per second as a highest or maximum speed on our cell phones, it can go to 100 GB per second for a 5G network. And latency, which is basically the time it takes for us to upload or download the data or communicate between one device to another device. That is the latency. When it was 3G, we had a latency of 100 millisecond. When 4G came, it was around 30 seconds, and we are expecting that to reduce to below probably 1 millisecond in from the latency. So it's a 3G 100 millisecond, 4G 30 milliseconds, and for 5G it will be less than 1 millisecond. So how it is going to help a common human being when they are using these high internet speed? One, we can probably, I think easiest thing come into the mind is we would be able to see movies or download movies probably within 5 or 10 seconds if we are looking from any OTT platforms. That's a smaller problem to solve, right? But think about, can we do remote surgeries where a surgeon is sitting in one city or one country and able to operate a person in another city or another country? That's getting the reality of the situation. China has already done many test cases on humans utilizing the 5G network to do operate the remote surgeries. E-health is going to be evolving big time using 5G, because we will be able to collect a lot of information from patients using all these sensor devices, wearable devices, and we will be able to provide a high resolution video consultation using our expert surgeons and the staff. Even this assistant robots will very soon come into the picture, which will be able to work around with 5G technologies. It could be an era where doctors can work from home as well, like all of us are doing right now, right? So I think that could be the era which we would be seeing with 5G. Just to add one more example here, think about a situation where their firefighters are working in a building where it is completely smoked and they can't see it. With the help of this 5G technologies, they will be able to identify their colleagues using the sensors. One can identify the probably road plan map of the floor and exist using the AR VR technologies, which would be aligned with their glasses. So that is the future what we are seeing, where 5G will be able to transmit all the information with milliseconds, and we will be able to utilize these you can say high-end technologies in a real world problem. So that's the probably way to look at it. Autonomous cars are going to go big time, because we will be able to transmit lots and lots of data using milliseconds, and all the surrounded technologies like IoT, sensors, the cloud are going to help big time. 5G is probably one part of the section in the entire journey, but other technologies also going to play a bigger role in this journey. So that's
Shivani,
from 5G.
thanks, Dr. Shivani. And taking a leaf from what you just ended with, the cloud aspect, I think who better not to talk about cloud is Irina, where her life today, and when I look at her profile in LinkedIn, she spent, enormous amount of years, thinking about cloud and driving cloud adoption globally. So Irina, you want to talk about how cloud plays in this entire network infrastructure?
Absolutely. And I'd just like to build on what Dr. Shivani talked about here right now. So I'd like to break this into two parts. Basically, one is to do with the efficiency of what you're thinking about right now, and then taking it across to the future, and then innovation as to how you're really thinking about what is lying ahead. So when you think about efficiency, let me talk about two parts here. So the first is about getting this entire data infrastructure in place. So elements of that is, how will you remain staying accountable for the data? And the world would really see an emergence of something maybe like a digital passport, or say even a health passport, wherein the ability of the consumer to stay accountable about what data, how much of the data can be used for what purposes, and that will bring in an era of possibly decentralized approach to managing data and privacy. The second component of this is also thinking about the data governance. Irrespective of where the data is lying, how can you think about, say, the classification, the overall data discovery, and the end-to-end data lineage? So that's the first part. The second, in context of this, is also how can you bring about real hyper automation? Technology has evolved, and one should think about hyper automation possibly as a means to complement the human ingenuity, right? So think about how we are taking this across, not just in the web, on it to bringing a lot of AI towards that. Now, switching gears, thinking about innovation, some of the things that Dr. Shivani also talked about, 5G ushering in things. Certain important aspects will also be towards thinking about now, but thinking about quantum in context of what can be achieved and the future possibilities, and starting the journey on quantum now. Scenarios that you might want to indulge in. And if you think about how you want to develop it, you can create, say, an agile approach, because the algorithms would not need to be rewritten. So things which are taking, say, a few couple of months right now would be done in a couple of hours, whether it's towards the face detection in various scenarios right now, or say healthcare, or issues towards societal impact, say global warming, etc., the significant compute investment which needs to be done right now, that can really be alleviated. Even something which is burning top of every organization's mind is, say, security. So when you're thinking about cryptography in that context, how does that come in? And the last point I would really want to touch upon is the convergence of the intelligent edge with the cloud, because the edge is the propeller of feeding in so many kinds and types of data to the cloud. And how are we democratizing the edge? So 5G really brings that ability, but how are we bringing that edge inference close to where the data is generated, and then abstracting that to the cloud, so that the flow of the signals and information become even more cohesive, real time, to bring that power of AI, basically. So that's the way I'll summarize it.
No, it's great when you think about the network and the infrastructure from a cloud perspective, and then how do you really make it applicable. And Sundara, I would love to call you in right now in this specific area, and taking a lead from what Irina just mentioned, where she speaks about governance, but also she talks about hyper automation. She talks about augmenting and driving those efforts ahead. I don't think so any one of us are saying humans will not exist. We will. But how do we, bring the humans along with AI? And, Samendra just spoke about humanizing AI. But when you think about 2030, or when you think about 2 years or 10 years from now, how do you think that evolving along with network and cloud as we move along?
To put it in simple terms, Anis, if I have to define it in one sentence, if we have to humanize machines, humanize AI, it is nothing but ensuring that we inject empathy in them. It is easier said than done. Theoretically, I can say that, if you are able to make a machine empathize with another human being, then that's called humanizing AI. It's easier to say that. But there is so much of complexity involved in that. And the ability to imagine, the ability to ideate, the ability to connect with the cognitive thinking of another human being, that is what is meant by humanizing AI. But the good news is that we are approaching that. There is a great progress made, particularly in the last 3 to 4 years' time. The great advancements that have happened in the area of NLP, thanks to several technological advancements like transformers and all, we are slowly approaching that area. And one very important field that I would like to call out is what we call as conversational AI. Conversational AI, the definition of conversational AI is very different from what is mostly understood by even many of the startups who are working in this area, unfortunately. If I'm going to ask a machine, what is the temperature? And it says 26 degrees Celsius, and it says, what's your name? It answers, and where is the nearest restaurant? It answers, no, that is not conversational AI. That is not how I converse with another human being. When I converse with another human being, there is so much of emotion in my voice, and my mood is reflected in my voice. My mood is reflected in my facial expression. My mood is reflected in the way I move my eyebrows. Can a machine understand that and give a response that is in synchronization with my mood, my emotions, what I am implying, not what I am talking, what I am implying with, and how I am interacting with the rest of the environment? That is what is conversational AI. And great strides are being made in the area of conversational AI, and technologies are growing really, really fast. And we are not very far away from the day when you are talking to an agent and the agent responds back, and you cannot distinguish whether the agent is a human being or a machine. Those days are not really very far away. Yeah, that is how I would put it as.
So I'll just put you on the spot. When you said it's not that far away, how far is it for us?
Well, yeah. So see, few things have already happened, Anis. Example could be, if I may be allowed to go a little deeper into this. Multimodal conversational AI. That's a big thing. That's very much humanizing AI. What I mean by multimodal is that the combination of vision, NLP, and speech. Like if I go to a store, if I walk into a store, and I point my fingers at an object, and I say, hey, what is the price of that object, right? Here we are talking about all the three modes of deep learning coming into play. The camera should understand which object my finger is pointing towards. It should understand the Indian accented English that I am talking. And then, of course, there is a lot of NLP here because it has to understand my question. So how do you put all these three things together and give an answer which is intelligent? I mean, it should really tell me the price of the object which my finger is pointing towards. That is what a human salesperson would do. That is humanizing AI, and we are there already. And that involves very, very complex deep learning. I mean, let me not even use the umbrella term AI. It involves extraordinarily complex deep learning. And we're talking about very deep models. And it's not one or two models. It's an ensemble of models. And those things are happening today. Mm-hmm. Then the second one, I'll finish very quickly after citing this, is speaker diarization. Say, for example, let's say you and I, Anis, we are going in a car, and let me assume that I'm driving the car and you are sitting on the passenger seat. And we are conversing, we are having a friendly chat, we are talking about cinema, we are talking about politics, we are talking about elections. And by the way, you also end up saying, hey, this is the nearest Chinese restaurant. Then that particular question is pointed to the machine and not to the person who is driving. So, I mean, I don't want interruptions when you and I are chatting, but I do want the machine to react when you're asking this question, take me to the nearest Chinese restaurant, or which is the nearest Chinese restaurant. Yep. Speaker diarization, this is a very complex thing. This is something which we take for granted. Let us say 5-6 people are traveling in a car, and we know who the question is being asked. We know who has to answer. But to make a machine understand that and ensure that the machine gives the right answer at the right time to the right person, that's humanizing AI. And that's happening today. I mean, these are all things that have already happened. Emotions and empathizing is going to take many more years. I don't want to make an intelligent guess here, but I would say it is going to take many more years. Yeah.
You spoke and you emphasized a lot about humanizing and specifically about the emotions and empathy. But, there is in this ecosystem, when we talk about, it's also about people. And, even Pankaj spoke about the 5 C's, and there's one critical element about compassion and empathy, and there is a lot of legality around it. I often give an example. You give a syringe to a doctor and to a terrorist, the application can be very different and the outcome can be very different also. So ethics become a big play and the legal ecosystem becomes a big play. So Shalini, since you've been doing a lot of work around that over the years, and you also collaborating with a lot of academia today, how do you see that ecosystem of I would say ethics and empathy really becoming critical for AI to become large in the next years to come?
Okay, thanks, Anis. So let me just explain, why ethics becomes important. It becomes important because we start applying AI to a large set of societal use cases. AI is not something which is in the lab, which is just helping some of the software products or some of the IT products to do better. It has to go, and it is doing that, which is it is going out of the lab and getting applied to some of the large problems which are maybe defined as sustainable development goals by United Nations, right? To solve issues in education, to solve issues in healthcare, to solve issues in things like hunger. So now what we have to understand, how does it apply? When we start building use cases which solve and which can affect a large number of billions of population, the most important part is to have trust in AI, right? So the trust in AI is, and the trust could be, and they could, and trust will happen only when the bias is removed, right? And we keep hearing about a lot of people having biases in their minds and in how how they conduct the use cases. And that itself flows into our AI model. So there is a lot of work happening on removing bias both in the data as well as the people who are making the models in both situations. And there are a lot of fine algorithms which have been made in this case. And we also talk about an explainability kit where what we have done is we have built set of models and we have made it open source that everybody can come and start exposing them to their data and see how does bias come in. Because until and unless you have a trust on that system, the AI will not, the fear of AI will always remain, right? So to bring down the fear of AI, you need to have a set of controls, set of checks,
which will help in removing all these biases. And
Sure.
then you apply it to large problems like education or healthcare. Then the problems becomes more easy and trustworthy to follow. Like for example, let's just apply in healthcare, right? I mean, how much of just to do molecular discovery, it takes tens of millions of dollars. It takes 10 decades to do that activity. Now
Yep.
that can be brought down only if you apply algorithms and a lot of AI algorithms and deep learning algorithms to shorten that cycle. So you have shortened the cycle, you have reduced the time frame, but when you start applying it to people, then you get new data. And people, and when you are solving a molecular discovery, and we have seen it with the the vaccination, the corona and the COVID, that the population of North America is very different from the population in India. So you have to see that strain, you have to see how it reacts to those people. And in all these scenarios, it's really important that the trust and the bias mitigation is happening along with it. And all this also, so the system will be accepted only when all the angles and the ecosystem is collaborating with it, right? So you cannot do it, you cannot do molecular discovery. A molecular discovery works there's a huge matrix. There are tens of millions of columns and millions of rows matrix that you have to solve in a very small amount of time. So you need to have an ecosystem of people to be doing providing the quantum computing to it, because a normal compute will not work. You need to provide a large amount of data annotation. I mean, you need data engineers to clean the data, because you might have huge amount of data, but then it might be garbage in, garbage out. So you have to bring in the whole annotation part of it into it, and the engineering part of it. And then you also need to have a variety of set of sources which are providing that. So essentially, to build the trust and ethics, it's important that we have those algorithms and there's enough research which we do to mitigate that bias. And then there is also an element of explainability into it, which I want to bring out, because you might do great AI, but if you're not able to explain it to the end user, so you might be building AI for crop yield for farmers, but if you're not able to embed it with the right design into the right models and explain it to the users, it's going to fall flat, right? So the best AI will be least absorbed just because you have not been able to explain why that prediction that it is going to, your crop is going to fail or it's going to be affected by that pest. So that whole cycle of not just build, but will remove bias, but also have explainability for a large ecosystem. So explainability for me might be different who's a farmer, and for you who's an agri-scientist might be very different, right? So the explainability also has to be built in as per the persona for whom you are meaning the AI for. So that whole cycle has to be built in, and it needs an ecosystem. Like it needs a village to raise a child. So you need to have an ecosystem for it to be absorbed by each one of them and have a gigantic effect.
So talking about this village, and you actually spoke about research and you spoke about AI and science being evolved. So I'll pose one more thought to you. Today, a lot of that research and science is coming from, I would use that word, G mafia and the bad companies. Do you see that being critical in, let's say, 2030 from now, that these dominance still exist, or it's going to shift in a different way?
So it's definitely going to shift, right? I mean, I don't believe in this. These words come in just because there are a few bunch of people who have applied it early enough. But in technology, there is no early enough, right? The AI is democratized in such a manner, and that I mean, I have been talking to startups who have used AI to get nutrition plans for 300,000 people. Right, so it's a imagine that my diet preferences are known. What kind of diet I want to have, that is known to a to a startup, and and there is so much which can be done about it, right? So there is, of course, whenever any technology comes in a large, there is a talk about 6-7 organizations who are leading, and they are doing good work. They are ahead of the curve in terms of scientific discovery, in terms of innovation. But not everything is not everything just created in the lab reaches the people, Again, I'll go back to the point that the AI is democratized in such a manner. The APIs, they become such vanilla product after some point of time, that how you apply it and how you take it to the end user becomes much more important. So the work on explainability and bias is what is going to drive. The cartels can, of course, always push the envelope, and they can, there can be things. But envelope and scientific discovery will continue to happen, and that should be done. That should be done. But then the usage of that across all the ecosystem is what is going to make it more successful and more applicable to a large population.
Great. So I'll just change gears, because in the interest of time, and I did did give a heads up to the panelists that there's going to be a rapid fire, because this is, because this is one of the last sessions, so there is going to be a rapid fire. So let's make it fun. So Irina, what is that one personal thing which you would like AI to solve, and something probably 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you don't want to do it anymore?
I think getting a unified experience of how I get represented, and thereby giving in recommendations to me to be ahead of the curve, whether it comes to anything that I do, right from my consumer behavior, from a shopping standpoint, to my learning, which I do to keep ahead of the curve, building that entire persona of myself and the consumer experience. That's something that I really want to get elevated.
Okay. Shivani, a different question for you. What would you want to see probably in the next 5 to 10 years, because you are working with one of the largest telecom companies, let's say change, with AI really coming in and change happening for you in the enterprise setup, as an employee or as a profession?
Absolutely. So I have been part of banking industry for a very, very long time. And when I work for India, the major problem comes is that 20% of our population is unbanked and other 20 is underbanked. And that is the problem I probably prefer any G mafia or bad companies to come and solve, or Reliance to take that part to solve that inclusion problem for India, where each and every person is able to work with financial institutions directly, right? Paytm or Google Pay is changing the world. Corona has given us acceleration, but there is a leap ahead which we have to work around with it. The way M-Pesa has changed the dynamics in Kenya, right? If you see probably in 97 when M-Pesa has started, that time only 25% of the Kenya population had bank accounts. Now it has risen to 90% because M-Pesa is available on everyone's phone. And that is the place where I think I want to see India to go, where 88% of our population have a cell phone, and that number of household, that is the number of household who have cell phones. 2 years back, if you see the toilets in the Indian household, that was less than 88%. So a phone, a device which is well connected with Indian population is a one big thing. And we should be able to utilize the maximum potential of it. Either it is a telecom provider, either it is educational institutes, or you can say e-doctors or banking institution. I think whatever we want to do, it has to happen through a mobile phone, where the adoption can go to the probably end mile customers whom we are looking for forward to deploy it. So that's my vision. That's my hope from AI.
Thanks, Dr. Shivani. Sundara, in one word, if you have to go 10 years back and change one thing which would have improved your life today in NVIDIA, what would that be in one word?
Go back 10 years and change something.
Yes.
Maybe we should have started AI computing even earlier. Yeah, because I'm not telling this because I'm an NVIDIan. The fact is that NVIDIA is at the center stage of several advancements that are happening in AI today. Maybe if we had started, we started, I think, about 7 years ago. If we had started 10 years ago, it would have been even better than what it is today.
Okay. And Shalini, just to wrap it up, a question to you, and I'll hand it over to Riaz after that. If, let's say, you have to create your own avatar, a robot, like Sophia, what would you want her to do today?
I want her to solve the problem of education in India, right? I have just built a higher education platform called Samshiksha, where I've understood how higher education children, how much they are struggling to get degrees and get the right courses. You can get a degree, do an completely online degree, and AI to solve the learning profile of different people. I mean, education is something which has suffered the most during COVID, and it's an awakening call for all of us to apply AI in that area, understand the mindset of the students, how they learn. If AI can solve that problem, and I would like that bot to solve that for me.
Great. Thank you for being a perfect guest and answering these rapid fire questions. Riaz, over to you.
Thank you so much to all our panelists, Sundar, Irina, Dr. Shivani, Shalini, and of course our moderator, Anis, for this wonderful panel discussion. And ladies and gentlemen, stick with us as we switch now to our next session, and we'll be back in just 15 seconds. Don't go anywhere. Stick with us, please.